Hi everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Hallmark Plus More, where we watch and talk about shows, movies, mysteries, Hallmark ornaments, and anything else that floats our boat. So today I'm going to be reviewing NCIS Origins, Season 1, Episode 14. So before I get into the review, I just want to say thank you to everybody who subscribes to my channel, likes my videos, leaves me comments. I appreciate it so much. And I do read all my comments, so if you have any comments or questions about the episode, just leave them below. I love hearing from everybody. So getting into this episode, it was an interesting case because it was a little different, and there was a lot of emphasis on a side story with Mary Jo, which if you've seen my videos, I love Mary Jo. She's one of my favorite characters. She's such an amazing actress, and I just love her role in this show. So getting into the case, a woman is missing. That's where, you first find out. The husband is military, obviously it's NCIS. So he's calling saying his wife is missing, and they're like, well, did she go out for a run? Did she leave? And they're like, no, she wouldn't leave the house. My wife is Sarah Dunn. And they're like, oh, okay. And I think it was Frank's who was like, I don't know, I don't read the papers. Who's Sarah Dunn, right? And she apparently is. She just got out of prison. She swindled what it says $9.2 million in 7 years. So over a 7 year period, she stole 9.2 million. Which is a lot of money. She basically swindled it from people. So she did her time in prison, right? She just got released a week ago. So she's at the house. And the husband's like, no, she wouldn't have left the house. We're getting harassing phone calls. Like, look, she changed in prison. She's a different person. She doesn't need all the money, and they're like, why did you stay with her? And he was like, because I love her, and I know she's a changed person. So they definitely want to figure out kind of like where she is, because the husband's like, she wouldn't leave, like somebody had to have kidnapped her or abducted her or something. And he said they were getting, like I say, harassing phone calls. So they go to the house, and they're looking. They see her purse and her phone, and everything's in the house, so it doesn't look like she left. Her car is still there. So they look everywhere. They start to look outside, and they find that she was actually under the pool. So they have a pool and a covering, and they actually find her in the pool, slightly over the covering. So I don't know if somebody, drowned her and hid her there because she was slightly under the cover. But obviously they go for an autopsy to find out what happened. And the coroner actually said no foul play. She had a heart attack. She was walking in the backyard. She had a heart attack. She fell. She hit her head on the pool, and she went in the pool, right? So you're like, okay, are you sure? Because she was kind of found there. But no, that's what the coroner said, which, by the way, I don't remember the name of the actress that's filling in for the coroner, but I love her. She was great. She was awesome. So forgive me for not remembering the actress's name, but she's filling in as a coroner in this episode, and I thought she was so funny, and I just loved, the comic relief that she gave in this episode. So I just want to say that. And I apologize for looking at my notes. There's a lot of side story going on with Mary Jo, which I will tell you about. But I just wanted to kind of get on with the case. So she is actually a investment banker, I think is what they called her, who did creative with the client's money and basically lost everything. So that's what she went to jail for, basically swindling 9.2 million and losing it. So I guess they never recovered the money. And they told the husband, like, you don't remember going on these trips? And he was like, no, I went with her on the lavish, these trips. I just thought she was doing good at work. So the husband wasn't part of the scheme, knew his wife was, making good money. but didn't have any idea that she was stealing it from all these people. So I feel like that was, I feel bad for him because I believed him. You know what I mean? I believed that he didn't know, and that he really loved his wife and thought his wife had changed. But it's kind of, they get into their phone records. Randy has several scenes with the phone company trying to get the records because before they find out that she died of a heart attack, they're trying to find out foul play. They're looking through her financials. They're looking through her phone records. And try to find out what happened. Um, and once they find out that she died of natural causes, they're taking everything off the board. And meanwhile, before they find that out, they're interviewing all these people that lost their money. It's so heart-wrenching because you're watching these interviews and they're bringing in all their clients. And they're saying how they've lost their retirement. And older gentlemen's like, I'm in my 80s. I should be retired by now, but I'm cleaning floors, because I lost all my money. So it was so sad to hear about all these people who have lost their money, that she had just, took away. And even though she went to jail and served her time, people are still harassing her because they've lost everything. They saved money for 50 years and now they have nothing. So I believe in, serving your time. But I also understand how people are still upset, right? Because they can't get their money back. And now they're having to work, or that was my kid's college fund, or whatever their story is. So Mary Jo actually hires a new secretary. So it's Mary Jo, there's another woman named Gail, and they hire a new girl. Well, Mary Jo, like I say, I love Mary Jo. She's on top of it. She takes care of everybody in the office. She has her own life and her own family. She's kind of daydreaming and has memories of her family and family get-togethers, and good happy times. But she's that way in the office too. So she tells the new girl, like, hey, we're going to schedule interviews with all the clients. Make sure to have the husband come in the afternoon. We do not want the husband in when the clients come in because obviously we don't want a shouting match or anything like that. So she says she understands, and then she messes up and says the husband wanted to come in early. We had a slot. I brought him in. So now the clients are yelling, and Franks is mad, and of course he's mad because obviously he thinks Mary Jo messed up because she's in charge of the other secretaries. And ultimately, Mary Jo, being the amazing, wonderful person she is, she does take credit for it at the end and say, hey, it's my fault. Like, I should have double checked him. She doesn't place the blame on the new girl, or, I have a lot on my plate. I'm going through something personal. It's not my fault. She doesn't give any excuses at all. She just says, yeah, I should have double checked you. So another reason to just love the Mary Jo character. So they bring in the husband, they bring in all the clients. So once they find out that she died of natural causes, that's when Mary Jo says to Franks, like, I don't care that she died of natural causes. You owe it to these people to find that money. If you think for any reason that not that money, could still be somewhere, that she didn't go through it all, because Franks is thorough. I do like that about Franks. He's thorough. So he actually hired a forensic accountant to try to find the money when they were still trying to think that she was killed or murdered. So they had a forensic accountant come in for 8-10 hours and go through all of it. And she actually said of the 9.2 million that she stole, and I apologize, I'm looking at my notes. She believes 5.1 million is still at large. So all of her forensic accounting, she's like, look, she stole all this money, but she didn't spend it all. I still come up with 5.1 million that's still out there. Offshore account, who knows where she's hiding it. But, once they find out that she wasn't murdered, that's when he's, saying, let's put the case away. That's case solved. And Mary Jo actually, and I actually wrote down the quote, she says, you owe it to them to find the money. I know the case is closed. She wasn't murdered. It was an accident. She had a heart attack. She died, whatever, case closed. You hired an accountant. you owe it to those people. I just printed up all these interviews, spent hours, because remember, this is back in the day, so there's not videotape. Like, she has to actually listen to every single interview and type it up, and for the records, for the files. So she's like, I don't care that I did all that. That's not the point. The point is, these people lost a lot of their livelihood and you owe it to them. And then she says, you come in and look for the money because that's the job you signed up for. And this is the part that took me, was to help make people whole even when you are not. That's the job. So I loved that, because that is what they do. They help find people, they help give people closure when your loved one is missing or killed or murdered, or disappeared. So she says, that's the job you signed up for. And then she said, to help make people whole even when you are not. So that obviously resonated with Frank's, because the next morning he comes in and he's like, all right, we're keeping it up. We're looking for this money. So keep calling. And this whole time, I kind of mentioned earlier, Randy's on the phone with this phone company and they're giving him the runaround. And he's like, maybe I should have a deeper voice. And, trying to get information, and they're kind of not wanting to give it to him. So I love that, because Randy finally hears back from the phone company, and that kind of solves the case. The phone company said that she made a call, or somebody made a call to a travel agent. So they go back to the house and question the husband. Now, I do feel bad for the husband, because he really honestly didn't know. And he really felt like Sarah had changed. And he kept saying that, look, she was a changed person. I don't know what you mean that there's still money in an offshore account. Like, I don't have it, I mean, I work in the military. You see, our house is simple. Like, I don't think she's hiding any money. And I think she's really sorry, and we're starting a life together. So, and I don't get why she was outside. She hates the outside, or the backyard. Sorry, she doesn't like the backyard. She says it's not finished and she never likes to go out there. So for some reason, that's, spoke to Gibbs and Layla. So they go out there. Layla finds a stone that looks like a little, not flat, like maybe something you can pick up. And something's hidden back there. And that's what she finds. She finds a stone in the backyard, a loose stone. Under the stone are, in a Ziploc bag, bank statements for large sums of money, like 100,000 money, receipts. So you're like, okay, they found the money, right? Some offshore account. So she hasn't changed. She went to the backyard and hid receipts. She made a phone call to a travel agent on a one-way ticket to Colombia. So, like I said, Randy's tip, all throughout the episode, he's trying to find out information, and they're not giving him anything, and he finally gets through, and that's the piece of information that really solved the case. Once you find out she booked a travel agent booked a ticket to Colombia, now the offshore account's probably in Colombia. Now you have bank receipts. So they were able to recoup some of that money. So, I mean, and you don't see a lot of Gibbs in this episode. Gibbs is working on the case. There is a scene with him and Layla where he says, oh, you did call, your ex-boyfriend, is everything good? And she's like, yeah, I did call Eddie, but it was good closure. So she said it was good closure. So it kind of leads you to believe she called Eddie to kind of make up and apologize. Gibbs is thinking they're getting back together, because that's what he meant by calling Eddie, that he's a good guy. But I think Layla called him and kind of patched things up, and now she has that closure. So I think they're kind of trying to make you believe that Layla is still single, and there's still that awkwardness between her and Gibbs. So, we'll see what develops with that. But it seems like, they kind of hinted and mentioned that in the last couple episodes, with Gibbs saying, call Eddie, try to work things out. So they did kind of give you, that 1 minute conversation between them. And, Gibbs actually tells Randy, you were persistent with the phone company. You broke the case wide open. So you kind of see Gibbs say to Randy, you did a great job, right? So what I mentioned earlier was this side story with Mary Jo. So I told you I love Mary Jo. She's such a sweet character, and the actress that plays her does an amazing job. So throughout this, the episode actually starts out with Mary Jo kind of having a flashback. Like I say, she has these memories or daydreaming about, family gatherings at the house. And as any typical family gathering, you kind of talk in the kitchen while you're making food or preparing food. And her daydream was no different. She had family and friends over, and Mary Jo was so loved by her family and friends. And you saw little Millie there, which you probably recognized from previous episodes. So I'm glad they showed her. She's such a sweet girl. She had some tragic things happen to her, but she's always stayed in contact with Mary Jo. So I love that they included her. Mary Jo gets served with divorce papers while at work. So she's kind of taken back by it. She tells Layla's like, my sister's a lawyer. She can look at the papers for you. So she does. And Mary Jo finds out that her husband is suing her, or not, I guess not suing her, but as part of the divorce papers is asking for half of everything. Alimony, even alimony, half the house, half of everything. So she's really just like surprised by that. And we don't really know a lot of Mary Jo's family life. I think she was one of those people where she's always happy. She takes care of everybody at work, right? You've seen her at her house with Millie, because like I mentioned, the little girl. But you never really think she has problems, right? Because she's always so cheerful and she takes care of everybody. I always say that about myself. Everybody says I smile all the time. I must have a good life. But the truth is, we all have issues. We all have problems. We all have, bad things happen in our life. But we can choose to either be mean and miserable and frown, or we can choose to be happy and smile and go about our day. And I think, I like that about Mary Jo, because I kind of see that that's how I do it too. You can smile and go about your business. Everybody goes through hard times, but you don't have to be mean. When I say you can be anything, be kind, right? And I love that about Mary Jo. So even though she's kind of going through her own hardship by being served with divorce papers, and you later find out all the girls go out drinking, and she's like, I don't have any, and they're like, they try to say something bad about her husband, or you can say something bad, but her memories, she has these flashbacks. She's not angry with her husband. She's like, we both knew we were going to get a divorce. I think she was taken back by him asking for things. So Mary Jo, being the amazing person she is, instead of bad mouthing him, instead of going to his house angry like most people would, get drunk and then call him or show up at his house screaming. She's not like that. She's such a good, mannered person, right? So she goes over to her ex-husband's house, and she even says, like, look, I'm going to give you a benefit of the doubt. I want to know why you're doing this. And he's like, look, we both talked about getting a divorce. And she's like, no, I'm fine with the divorce. We know it was coming, right? Why do you want half of everything? Why do you want the house? And she's almost in tears. So you're like, okay, what memory of this house? And she's like, I don't want to forget. So I'm like, what does she not want to forget? Now, my first instinct is a missing child. You don't want to forget. I've seen people have children that run away or abducted or disappear, and the family doesn't want to move. They don't want to change their address. They don't want to change their phone number in case their child comes back to them, right? And so I'm thinking that lines, like, we don't want to forget. Did she lose a child? Did, a child disappear? What is her hold on this house, right? That's so personal. So you find out, her ex-husband was like, look, I didn't know it was asking for half of everything. I don't want the house. I don't want half of anything. We just said that eventually we would have to get a divorce, and that's what I'm doing. You asked that. I didn't need to, tell you in person. So from what you understand from the ex-husband, or what you see, is he doesn't want to hurt Mary Jo at all. He seems like such a wonderful person. Just seems like they drifted apart. it's one of those things where they've lived separate, you feel like, for so long, it was just inevitable for one of them to get the divorce. So he's just doing that. So he's like, look, I'll call the lawyer, I'll get it fixed. I don't want half of everything. You keep the house. And then she just says, I don't want to forget. And they actually embrace, and she starts crying. So I'm like, okay, I hope we find out what's making her so emotional. I am so glad that when she visits her husband, her I guess her husband, soon to be ex-husband, that he's not mean. I loved that they had that kind of sweet moment. Like, look, you've had a lot, you've had enough taken away from you. I'm not going to take anything else from you. You get the house. And I just love that when he was like, you've had enough taken away from you. So now I'm like, okay, the child died. Like that's where my mind's going, because he said it so loving. When you have kids with somebody, if you go through some kind of tragic loss, a sickness, a disease, a disappearance, an abduction, abuse, anytime you have any kind of, difficult situation and it involves your child and you're married, even if you get divorced, you still have that bond of what you went through with your child at whatever age, right? So even though they're getting a divorce, they're still going to have those memories that bond them together over what they went through. And so I love that. I know there are cruel people in the world. I know people get divorced and they just blame the other spouse for everything. I personally have never lost my child. I don't wish that on anybody. So I cannot speak from experience at all. I know it breaks people apart. I know when you lose a child, it can break up marriages. And like I said, I've never been through that. I hope I never have to go through that. But it bonded them. So he was like, yes, we need to get a divorce. We're no longer together, but I'm not going to take that away from you. So there was that really sweet moment at the end. And then she has another flashback, and you see them kind of dancing, and the song is Georgia on My Mind, which is an amazing song. Such a great song. And you're hearing that play, and I'm like, okay, you see kind of a crib in the background. You don't know what happened, but yes, they kind of lead you to believe that she lost a child. And he goes, write her name, say it out loud. So she writes on the wall the name Georgia. So then I'm like, okay, this is a personal song. You were going to name your daughter Georgia. You're dancing to Georgia on on My Mind, and you're real emotional. So then you see a scene in her house present day, right? Because I said she's been daydreaming most of the episode. And she moves, something off the desk, and you still see the word Georgia, but you see other names underneath it. So it makes me believe that she has other children. But you never get over the loss of a child. I don't wish that on anybody. I hope I never have to go through it. That's just so devastating. So that is a part of that house, and that's a part of her memory. And I think that's why she didn't want to sell the house or give him half of it. So again, even though you're splitting up, even though you haven't talked to your ex, he still is tenderhearted towards her, because that brought up memories for him too. And he knows how difficult it was for her to go through that. And I know it's difficult on men too. They're the father. I understand that. But it's a different level when it's the mother. We carry the child for 9 months. They're a part of us. When you lose a child at a young age, I can't even imagine. And like I say, I'm not saying it doesn't affect the man at all. It does. You could tell he was touched by it too while he was comforting Mary Jo. But that's hard for a woman to get over. No matter how many other children you have, you're still going to think about that one. So it was so tender to see them together and to see that side of Mary Jo. So this episode was kind of heavy on Mary Jo. She's one of my favorite characters. I didn't mind that. You didn't see Gibbs very much at all in this episode. there was that great conversation between Mary Jo and Franks that I loved, when Mary Jo was like, look, you owe it to these people. They want their money back. You owe it. You had a forensic accountant. It's there somewhere. That's your job. So I love that, to make people whole. So ultimately, like I say, I love Franks. I think he's a little bit of a sexist, and but at the same time, even though he talks down to Mary Jo, he also respects Mary Jo, which I know I just contradicted myself in the same sentence, but they have a complicated relationship, I guess I should say, because I really think Franks respects Mary Jo, but at the same time, that was the way it was, I guess, in the times. I don't know. Not that I'm making excuses, but I'm glad, what she said to him resonated, because the next morning he made them all look for the money. And then at the end, and this is narrated by Mary Jo, which I thought was brilliant, because she has that mothering voice, and Mary Jo has a very soothing voice, and she's talking about fixing everything. She fixes everything for everybody. So at the end, you see, and you don't hear it. You kind of hear Mary Jo narrate it. You don't actually hear them talk, but you see the scenes of, Franks and Gibbs and Layla telling the clients that they have found some of their money, and they're actually giving money back to the clients. And Mary Jo is narrating it. And it's just the sweetest thing. I love the way they ended the episode, because you're hearing these people talk about how they lost everything. And then you see, that relief, and that kind of thank you for finding my money. And she stole 9.2, they found 5.1. Obviously that's not all of it, but that's some of it. At least some of the clients got back some of their money. And it worked out so well. So, CBS, I applaud you. Great job. The way you had Mary Jo narrated at the end, was great work. I loved that. And then, you kind of see her tell the new girl, the new secretary, and Gail, she apologizes. That was my fault. You told me to bring the husband in. And Mary Jo, like I said, she took credit for it. Like, no, that's my fault. And she's like, I'm not giving up on you yet. So, I mean, she's even telling the new girl, like, yeah, you screwed up. I should have double checked it, but I'm not giving up on you, And then Layla gives Mary Jo the papers and says, we worked it out. So the last scene is her. I kind of told you she was in her house, and she saw the name Georgia that was still written on her wall. Then she signs the divorce papers. So I guess Layla's sister went through them once he went back to his lawyer and took that stuff out, and she's signing it, keeping her in the house. So, I mean, it definitely ended bittersweet, right? Because Mary Jo's narrating, all the people are getting a little bit of their money back, and she, feels a little bit of relief. She confronted her ex in a nice way, didn't come up screaming and hollering, and found out he didn't know that all that was in there. He just wanted to get the divorce final, and she signs the papers. Next week starts a little interesting. Some kind of arson. It looks like a car was blown up, but it also looks like there might be something personal going on with Franks. Another thing, meaning that I didn't mention about Franks loving Mary Jo, how amazing she is. She finds out, that Tish is moving her things out, and she even says, Franks, you can stay at my house. I mean, she's such an amazing person. I love that character. I hope we see more scenes with her. So you've heard me in the past say, this is NCIS Origins. It's supposed to be about Gibbs, and a lot of these episodes are mainly focusing on the other characters. But I like Mary Jo. I think she's such a great character, and you kind of have to do that. Even though I want it to be about Gibbs, because that's what you told us it would be about. He's so quiet. You really do have to get to know his coworkers, because you gotta find out how he is the way he is, and it's these people are helping him become who he is. So definitely a good episode, very bittersweet, makes me love Mary Jo even more. Like I say, next week is interesting doing, we might see more about Frank's personal life, maybe how he picks up the pieces after Tish leaves, but it'll be interesting to see. I hope you enjoyed my review, and until next time, I will see you then. Bye.